Hey folks, this is Ethan. If you've found value from listening to this podcast and you'd like to support us, there are a few things you could do. First, you could go to Apple Podcasts or Stitcher and leave us a review. Leaving us a review helps other people find the show. You could also share these podcast episodes on your social media pages. You could blog about them. You could talk about them on your own podcast, or just tell all your friends and colleagues about it. Whatever you can do to help support us, we do appreciate it. Really. This sounds like a stupid question.
Probably is, because, go ahead. Skilled managers equals high morale, which equals all that cool stuff that you cannot pay for and you can't punish for.
When you close off that feedback channel, you are not going to be able to hear the truth.
In the first microseconds, your brain can't tell the difference between physical danger and what we call social danger.
I'm pissed off at you.
Me specifically?
Well, just because you're my boss and all.
Employees tend to get promoted until they reach their level of incompetence. Go forward and don't suck. Hey folks, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. I am Mike Nash with Nash Consulting, and I am the parental unit of
the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast.
No, what was I'm the parental unit of
of Ethan Nash.
Yeah, that was super awkward. But I'm Michael Nash.
And I am Ethan Nash, and we are your hosts of the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast. How's that?
That's awesome. And we also happen to be related, and it's been fun. Ethan and I have been working on building this business, helping managers thrive, helping managers not suck at being managers. And we're now here with you. We started this podcast a couple months ago, and it's been super fun.
We've had a great time. Today's episode is part 2 of the top 15 management skills, which we covered a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, we are working through just kind of briefly touching on the 15 skills that every manager needs to have on their radar. I want to encourage listeners as we go through these skills to write them down, to maybe create a note card or a page or something, because it wouldn't be a bad idea to have these 15 things kind of in your line of sight as you go to work every day and think about how you're doing in these 15 areas.
Yeah, and here's what I'll do for you all. I will include these top 15 management skills in the show notes. So if you want to go back and look at them, write them down, they will be there. We're not going to spend a lot of time introing this episode. If you are just now tuning in with us, please go back, listen to last or a couple weeks ago, that episode, part 1, and it will explain what we're really talking about here. But we covered the first 5 of the top 15 management skills. So we're jumping in at number 6.
Yeah, first 5, show caring and respect.
Advocate for your team.
Communicate.
Be fair and equitable.
And involve others in decisions.
Perfect. And number 6, give autonomy and trust.
And I want to tell you a story, Ethan. This story is about one of my children.
Oh.
He will remain nameless, but he's not you. So if you can narrow that down, since you only have one brother and 2 sisters. So my son, who will remain nameless because we haven't asked permission, we're going to call him...
Let's call him Elijah.
Let's call him Elijah. All right, so we're going to call him Elijah for the sake of this show. So...
Sorry, Elijah.
My wife and I, Christy and I, went on... we had the privilege of going on 2 10-day vacations a couple years ago during the summer. And Elijah was living with us at the time. And so Elijah was paid to take care of the house and can keep some things, working well and keep everything in order. And one of his jobs was to make sure that the garden stayed watered and the plants on the deck stayed watered and everything stayed alive. I wanted to come home and have everything alive because I spent a ton of time planting and weeding and preparing the gardens every year.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so
going.
Christy and I go on our first vacation, and by the way, we live in central Washington. It's really hot in the summer. It's very important that everything stays watered. We come back home, and it was a good thing that Elijah was not home when we got home, because I don't know that I would have been showing caring and respect if he had been home. But I walked into the backyard, and the garden actually was beautiful. The garden, which is quite a large plot out in the middle of the yard, was kept up nice. It obviously had been watered. But the 10 big pots of flowers on the porch were not only dead, they were ash. They were black and crumbled, and they had not seen a drop of water the entire 10 days.
He was probably trying out that new flamethrower he got.
Maybe that was it.
Yeah.
Bad Christmas gift idea. Yeah. So in any event, he basically did not keep these plants alive. And, he came home and we had this discussion, and he apparently didn't see these pots, which I just think is pretty funny, because he literally had to walk between them every day twice to get to the garden that he obviously watered. He did not see these plants dying. In any event, it wasn't a big thing, because we had a really good conversation, and he saw his mistake. But what I said was, hey, Elijah, you're going to take care of this. So I'm going to have you go buy some flowers. And he had to use his own money for this. And, again, we had paid him for the job, so he had some cash. You need to go buy some flowers, fill these up. Look, you can do whatever you want. Here's some parameters. Here's a couple ideas. When you get to the nursery, let the guy there know who I am and who you are, because he knows me and he knows what I like and he knows where we live. But go ahead and be creative. And so Elijah went to the nursery, came back with a bunch of different plants and flowers. I showed him how to plant one of the planters, and then he did the rest on his own. He did a really good job. Next trip comes up 3 weeks later. We take off for 10 days. Same deal. He's in charge of keeping everything alive. We get back, and not only are the plants beautiful, he obviously had rethought his choices. He had dug up some of the plants and moved them around and, did some different things. It was really cool. He'd played with it. He'd taken ownership. What was the difference here? What was so different about the first time versus the second time?
Autonomy.
Yep. It was about ownership. It was about autonomy. It was about me trusting him. It was all these things. He owned this now. These were his plants. He had a stake in how things turned out. And suddenly he's not just doing what he's told. He actually is taking care of these things because there's been something of him that he's put into it. And I just really believe that in every job out there, there's room for your employee to have a sense of ownership and autonomy. And that's going to, in many cases, take some discussion, take some training, take some trial and error, but you can find opportunities to give ownership to your people.
Yeah. And it may take some serious creativity as well. I mean, at some jobs, looking at them, you would think, okay, there's nothing that requires autonomy in this specific role. You can always find little things, right, that will give them some of that autonomy back, right? Give them back some of that autonomy.
Sense of control. Sense of choice. Ask them their opinions on things. What can we do to make this job more efficient? What can we do to improve this process? Give people some room to grow. Yeah, there's lots of things we can do.
Okay, number 7. Have we talked about this one before? Like ever?
Feedback?
Ask for feedback.
Yeah, we have talked about feedback quite a bit. In fact, we have 3 episodes. This one, though, is real specific. We've talked about being open to feedback, right? Mm-hmm. Being non-defensive. We haven't spent too much time on actually going out there and asking. And that's what this one is about. Seek feedback from your people. What would you like to see more of or less of from me as a manager would be a good example. How could we improve staff meetings? What would you like to see us do differently? What would you do differently if you were leading staff meetings? I need to make this decision. What do you think? More specifically, though, on this one, how am I doing? Right? I watched a group of customer service professionals about 3 years ago. There was 6 people in this team sit around for an entire day and evaluate their customer service skills. And they came out pretty strong, according to them. The people they didn't ask, of course, was their customers. Mm-hmm. They actually didn't ask the people who would know how they're doing in customer service.
How convenient.
Right. And in this case, we're talking about managers. Who are going to be the experts on how you're doing as a manager?
Yeah, the people you manage.
Absolutely. And so we need to ask, we need to be open, we need to honor and respect our people enough to believe that what they have to say matters.
So what does this do for you as a manager when you are asking for people's feedback? Like, let's break that down.
Yeah, well, it does several things. Again, this is dependent on that you're doing it skillfully. You're asking using the words and the tone that imply that you actually really want to know. So there's some nuances here, which we'll get to in another episode. But asking for feedback does several things. Number one is it shows humility. It shows your people that you are still in learning mode, that you don't know everything, which is going to help with trust and respect between you and your people. So you're getting points, you're getting management, you're getting relationship points by just asking. Number two, you learn some stuff that you didn't know before, right? We don't know what we don't know about the way we show up. We don't know a lot about the way we impact other people. So you now have some opportunities to grow and learn because you're hearing some things that you didn't know before.
I mean, and also just at a big level here, it gives you the opportunity to understand how can you best lead them to success, right? If you don't ask, how am I doing? Tell me what I can do to help you be successful, and getting that type of feedback, you're really missing something there as a leader.
Yeah,
you need to know those things.
Yeah, we don't know what our people need and want in many cases, and we also again don't know the way we're showing up. So here's a challenge, and I've asked many management groups this in the past. When was the last time you can remember asking for feedback? Now, I'm not saying when was the last time you asked for people's opinion about a decision. That's not what I'm asking. Actually asking for feedback about you and how you're showing up as a manager and how you're doing in your management skills. That's a question that I'd like listeners to consider that. When was the last time you asked your people for actual feedback about the way you're showing up?
Okay.
I've asked a lot of people this question, and I've had lots of people say they can't even remember the last time they ever asked that question. Or they've said to me, well, our company puts out a survey once a year. That's how I get that kind of information. Yeah. Doesn't work.
You don't get points for that.
You don't get any points for that. With the fact that HR put out a survey, you don't get any points for having asked your people sincerely, tell me what I can do more of or less of to be more effective as a manager.
Okay. Do you want to practice this one for a second? Let's have a conversation here.
Okay.
You and me. I mean, I think let's show what this conversation might look like. The type of questions you would ask.
All right.
Me. And I'll answer them honestly.
Okay.
Just air our laundry out there for everybody.
Okay. We can always edit this later.
Okay.
Like the direction it ends up.
Well.
All right. So are you asking me to do it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
all right.
You're my manager.
Yep.
And what would a conversation like this look like where you are asking for feedback in a way that's going to help you improve your ability to lead and manage?
All right. I'll start with one here. Ethan, why am I so awesome?
Well,
okay.
Your delusion.
All right. Let's do real. Okay. Hey, Ethan. Hey, I want to, thanks for hanging out, having this one-on-one conversation today. I want to ask you some things. I am trying to grow and improve as a leader. And so I'm asking everybody this question this month as I meet with you. I'd like to know, what are some things that you are finding effective in my leadership? What are some things I'm doing well as a manager? But I'd also like you to be thinking about some things you can help me with. What would you like to see more of from me? What would you like to see less of? What are some things that I'm doing that aren't as helpful, that are maybe even creating roadblocks for you? And you know what? You don't even have to answer right this second. I know that's a big question.
Oh, trust me, I'm ready to answer.
All right. So what do you think?
Let's start with what you I think you're doing well as a manager. Well, I think that for one, you're taking feedback very well. I've come with you with suggestions or things that I think you should change with the business or with your approach and style. And you've really considered them and actually made some of the changes that I suggested, which makes me know that you're listening. There's many more, but for the sake of time, I'll just start with one.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do work on that, and I think you actually have some really good ideas, and you're very smart. So I've benefited a lot from your feedback, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, give me something you'd like to see me work on as a manager. What could I do different, better, less of, more of? Okay, well then let's move on, since there isn't anything.
Nice try. The one thing I think that you could do more of as a manager is making sure when in a conversation with someone, you're not looking at magazines as he was just looking at a magazine, typing on your computer, just kind of being an asshole. Just kidding. This got way out of hand.
That went way sideways.
Okay, I just had to throw that in. Folks, this is not a good example of how to have this conversation necessarily, but that would be my feedback to him as a manager, and I've given this to him before.
No, it's actually true. And it's actually funny because as he was saying that, I literally was looking at a Reader's Digest sitting over here right next to me. So, but in any event, no, that's a good piece of feedback because I get really distracted easily and I'm under the delusion that I can multitask. Number one, I can't because as I'm focusing on my computer screen and reading an email, I'm literally unable to listen to what you're saying. So number two, the message I'm sending you at that point, of course, is I don't really care what you have to say. So I appreciate the reminder, and I'm going to continue to work on staying focused on the person I'm talking to.
And I know you just because I've known you for, most of my life.
Most of your life, since about day one.
I know that you probably are like at in your heart, really actually caring about what I have to say. Mm-hmm. It's just hard for me to focus in a conversation if someone is not right there with me.
I agree.
So
ask for feedback.
Bottom line. For feedback, and you will get a lot of good information. Number 8, deal with and fix problems. That's broad. That's broad. Yeah, there's always a lot of problems in the workplace.
Yep.
There's issues. There's problems.
Yeah.
How could you possibly deal with all of them?
Well, and this number 8, deal with and fix problems. We're not going to spend a bunch of time on this because bottom line is, on one level, this is kind of what employees think you're there for, right? I mean, if you're not there to get rid of the roadblocks, then what do I need a manager for? Mm-hmm. And this seems really obvious. It maybe doesn't even need to be stated, but unfortunately, I've worked with a lot of people who feel that their managers don't care about their problems, don't try to solve the roadblocks. They don't see it as their job. They put everything right back on the employee and they expect the employee to take care of it. So I just think it's important that managers remember that it's important to employees that they feel like they have an advocate and they feel they have somebody out there who's clearing the road and making things easier for them. And this gets to this one small thing on this. Please, listeners, don't ever say this to your employees. Anything you can fill in the blanks here.
Okay.
Hey, don't come to me with a problem unless
you have a solution.
Unless you're coming to me with a solution.
Gosh, that is so worn out.
Yeah, don't say that because
it doesn't even make any sense, first off.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first thing you're going to think as an employee is then what the hell do I have a manager for if I can't come to you with a problem? Right?
But it's also just counterintuitive. It wouldn't be a problem if you had a freaking solution for it.
That's exactly right. And I get the idea behind that phrase. What you're trying to say is be creative and be a problem solver. I get all that, but say it that way. In fact, here's what I would say to the employees. Look, come to me whenever you need to, including when you have a problem or a question. And if you have a solution or a suggestion, bring that too.
Right.
And we can talk about it.
And it's not to say that, as a manager, you shouldn't help employees think critically and solve the problem on their own, if they're able. It's just that you can't use that as a cop-out every time.
That's exactly right.
Or, the context matters. Context matters here with that.
Yeah. It sometimes it can serve to isolate managers away from their people, right? If you don't have a solution, don't come to me. It's the opposite of having an open door policy when you give the message that I'm not here to help you with your stuff.
Well, here's why people say that, I think. An employee comes to them with a problem. They look at that problem and think, well, there's a solution for that you can figure out, that I know you can figure out, right? You didn't use your resources, you didn't think critically about this, and you want to use this opportunity as a coaching opportunity.
Yep.
What is a better way to phrase or have that conversation than saying that snarky little phrase, don't come to me with a problem unless you have a solution? How else can you approach that to turn this into a coaching opportunity?
Hey, thank you so much for coming in and sharing that concern with me, that problem. Let's take some time together. Let's look at this. What are some suggestions or ideas you have? Let's look at some pros and cons. I mean, basically partner with your employee and walk through the decision-making and the critical thinking with them. Show them how your using your critical thinking, show them how you're using the resources, involve them. It's a great opportunity for coaching and modeling this kind of behavior. And then you can extrapolate. You can say, hey, you know what? Let's do that. Here's the solution that we've arrived at together, or here's the solution that I'm suggesting. Let's extrapolate. Next time this happens, now you have some more resources. Now you have some other, neural pathways to draw from as you make this decision next time.
Right. A good coach helps their people find their own solution. Right. So 9, if you're ready to move on.
Yeah.
Be approachable.
Yeah, and I'll just say right now that numbers 9, 10, and 11, we're going to skate through pretty quickly because they're either have been covered or we're going to be covering them future podcasts. But this one, be approachable. This really goes right back to the power differential episode. And I don't. Do you remember what episode that is? Maybe you don't have that in front of you. Sorry. We figure it out, folks. The power differential episode is where we talked a lot about the fact that we have to do what we can to mitigate this power differential, because by the nature of a relationship where there's power, right? You're the authority. There's going to be some level, even if it's unconscious, there's going to be some fear. There's going to be some caution. There's going to be some reluctance to be authentic, to speak their truth. It's just built in. It's built in because you have power and authority. It's built in because of their past experiences with other authority figures. So what we need to do to be approachable is practice all these behaviors that include things like warmth and friendliness, and not shaming people, and asking people's opinions, and having an open door policy, and having a little bit of fun, not always being serious. There's a whole bunch of things we do that makes us feel basically less scary.
Right. And this also could just mean going back to number 1, caring and respect.
Yep.
That's a really good way to show up as approachable. Because I've talked about this before with people, and sometimes they get the impression that being approachable is being a bubbly, happy person, right, which that's not always everybody. The analogy I like to use is, you remember Aragorn from The Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
Right? He on the outside doesn't necessarily seem like an approachable person, right? He's in that pub smoking his pipe in the corner with his hood on, looking all dark and mysterious and stuff. Very scary. But guess what? At the end of the freaking day, he cared about those hobbits and he showed them some respect. All right? It's not about how you look on the outside. It's about your actions and how you wield your sword. Sorry, I'm getting carried away.
Oh my gosh.
Number 10.
Right, let's move on. Oh, hey, wait. Before you go to number 10, humility. I just want to do a plug for humility. As far as being approachable, I think one of the best things you can do as a manager is to use phrases like, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't think through that. I should have asked your opinion first. Hey, my bad. Hey, I don't know. I'm not sure about this. You know better than I do. What would you do? There's lots of things we can do and say that will demonstrate to our people that we're human and that we're fallible. That actually creates approachability right there.
Yeah, just stating that you messed up and you recognize that. Hey, I messed up. This is definitely going to be a learning opportunity for me. Number 10, give recognition and thanks, which there's probably not a lot to say here. We've kind of covered it.
Well, honestly, there is a lot to say, and I really want to spend we did an episode on this.
Yeah, exactly.
That's embarrassing. You're right. Our third in our series of feedback. Right, was positive feedback.
Yep. This was 2 episodes ago.
Yes. I how easily I forget. So bottom line, don't be the honey I told you I loved you when I married you kind of person. I'll let you know if I change my mind. That you really do need to be a manager that recognizes both the accomplishments and the qualities, the character traits, and point those out and mention those. It's super powerful when I have a person who is my boss who notices where I'm succeeding. I'll remember that compliment probably for the rest of my life.
Yep. Episode number 10. Go check it out. This is a art to give proper recognition and thanks.
Yep.
But even if you choose not to listen to that episode, one thing if you can take away, just go out and give recognition and thanks for things that you see. All right. Number 11, hold people accountable.
Now, this is the one I should have said we are absolutely going to spend time on this. There is so much to say about how to have corrective conversations. We've done some of that already, but we're going to go much farther. How to have the second conversation when the first conversation wasn't effective, right? The importance of the phrase, what you allow, you teach, right? When you don't hold people accountable, when you don't have a conversation when something goes sideways, you're actually teaching that problem is okay and is going to be the way we're going to function from now on. So that we're gonna spend a fair amount of time. I'm guessing more than one episode on how to hold people accountable, how to have those conversations.
Okay, we'll bookmark that one for now. Be looking for that, folks. Number 12, be available and responsive. So be available. Does that just mean have an open door policy? Is that basically what we're talking about here?
Yeah, it certainly doesn't mean be available 24/7. It doesn't mean be at your employee's beck and call.
That's not realistic.
Nope. But what it does imply is that in general, when I need you, I can find you. That means open door policy. That means management by walking around, MBWA, which, the idea that I'm showing up, you can catch me in the hall. You can, I'm going to show up in your cubicle area and check in throughout the day. It doesn't mean micromanaging. It doesn't mean lurking or hovering or anything like that. But it's the opposite of feeling like I'm absolutely on my own and there's no one to call when I need resources.
Absolutely. Now, would you also say that, so it's be available and responsive, this includes responding to people's emails?
Absolutely.
Right? Responding to your team's emails. There's a really interesting op-ed that organizational psychologist Adam Grant wrote in the New York Times a while back. It kind of went viral.
Yep,
I actually shared that in our last newsletter. Not sure exactly what I think about his whole theory on email, but the one thing definitely rang true to me, which is in a digital age like this, ignoring someone's email that's like a colleague of yours could be the equivalent to just snubbing them when they say hi in the hallway.
Yeah.
Right? We're in a digital age and things get done faster, despite what people might think, because we are able to communicate via email now. You can't just ignore people's email just because you don't want to respond to it.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about if they're the people you manage or people that are on your team.
Yeah, and specifically the people that report to me, it's a huge sign of disrespect when they leave a message for me on my phone or through email and they get nothing back. As managers, we have to prioritize getting back to our people. So yeah, that's number 11. I'm sorry, that was number 12. Be available and responsive.
Okay. Number 13, follow through and follow up.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, you can hurt trust very quickly in an organization by not doing what you said you were going to do, or by, saying you're going to get back to someone and then not getting back to them. Any lack of follow through, and it's actually really easy to slip into this, right? Because we're busy, we have so much on our plates, and it's easy to miss this. But it only takes a couple, 3 times of you not following through on something you said you were going to do for the employee to start to think, all right, so basically I'm on my own.
Right.
I can't trust this person. I'm going to have to kind of grain of salt every time they tell me that they're going to get back to me.
Right.
It's trust is a really valuable commodity in the workplace. And unfortunately, one of the ways we can hurt it is this small, kind of mundane way.
Right. And I've heard before that trust is something that's easier to lose than it is to gain.
Yep.
Right.
Now on this one, like all the other items, I don't want listeners to be starting to get paranoid and, oh no, I can think of that time I didn't, follow through. Therefore, I'm a crappy manager.
You can still be saved.
Yes, it's not too late. It's not too late for you.
Too late for you.
Here's the thing. I don't follow through on something and I notice it and I come back to you and I say, hey, dude, I'm really sorry. I told you I was going to get back to you last Friday and I missed it. I apologize. It works, right? I mean, I know that sounds simple, but being humble,
humility,
apologizing, absolutely, right?
And by the way, we're gonna, we will have multiple episodes when we discuss our behavioral styles. There is a certain behavioral style that tends to have a little bit more of a problem with following up or following through on things just because there's a behavioral style that is kind of, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, I'll do that. We can do everything. And they kind of get in over their head and they're not able to follow through on things. So some people will do this more than others. I want to bring you back real quick to just the self-compassion piece that we talked about, in the first few episodes. With any of these top 15 management skills, the idea is not that you beat yourself up about these when you recognize that you've been doing a poor job at one of these. The idea is you recognize that I'm a human, I make mistakes, I'm not perfect. Now I have some areas for growth to work on. I just want to bring us all back to that.
I agree. Yep. Don't get stuck in a cycle of beating up on yourself as you go through this list. It's enough to have these 15 things on your radar and be working toward them, asking for feedback about them. You're on the right track. So let's finish up. Number 14 and number 15 are both pretty simple to describe. We're not going to spend a lot of time on them. Number 14 is make your expectations clear. Mm-hmm. Oh, you know what? I want to circle. I'm sorry, real quickly. Back to follow up. Have a good tracking system. Just write stuff down. I mean, I use my Outlook for all sorts of crazy things that include lots of pop-ups that tell me, oh, here's the day to get back to Ethan on this, or here's the day to get back to Lee on that. Use whatever systems you have available.
We're in the age of technology. You don't have to keep everything in your brain.
That's exactly.
I'm an Evernote guy. That's the way I organize everything. Use the tools. Sometimes that might just be a sticky note on your board.
Yeah, I worked with a manager right now. He's got a little tiny notepad in his pocket, and he brings it with him when he wanders around. And when he thinks of something, or when he makes a commitment, or when he hears something, he makes a note, right? Mm-hmm. So enough said. Number 14, make your expectations clear. This showed up in the Gallup study you mentioned last episode.
It was number one of the Q12 items of the most important things for managers to do, which is number one, employees need to know what is expected of them at work.
Yeah. People are really sensitive about being wrong. They're really sensitive about missing the mark. It's a self-esteem thing. And it's really scary for an employee to be out there doing their thing and not be sure that they're on track, right? And then end up having to, quote, be in trouble, right? Because they didn't do it right. And so we can alleviate a fair amount of anxiety by being super clear up front. And that includes on a micro level, like this project right here. Let me talk to you really specifically about what I need from you. To a macro level, like really good onboarding. Like when you join this company or when you join my team, sort of on a macro level, what's expected? How do we show up here? What do we do when we have feedback for somebody? In this organization, we don't badmouth our colleagues behind each other's backs. Instead, we do this, right? There's some really good stuff we can do in onboarding to lay out expectations for a positive, healthy workplace culture.
Number 15, provide resources and training. On this one, it kind of like that might not necessarily be in your control as a manager or supervisor, right? I mean, you have limited. I feel like this is one that you have limited say in unless you're really high up in the organization. You can go to bat for your employees for these, right? Like we talked about. What do you mean by this one, I guess, as a manager's job?
I think you're right. You don't always have a lot of control over the pocketbook, and so therefore you're not going to necessarily have control over training opportunities or new equipment or whatever. But you're right. Number 2 on our list is advocate for your team or for your employees. Here's an area where you can advocate. But this does imply that you're getting in there and you're asking questions, and you're asking things like, hey, if we had all the money in the world, right, and all the time in the world, what training opportunities would you like?
Right.
What training areas do we need for our team for us to be more successful? Mm-hmm. What if you could have, what do you need to be able to be more effective?
Yeah. Or what position would you like to move into someday? Maybe I can allow you to go shadow that person that has that job for a couple of days. I mean, there's creative ways to get around budget constraints.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And I've worked with lots of organizations, lots of work groups where the frustration really is about this one right here. Mm-hmm. There's a frustration around, I don't actually have the people resources. I don't have the equipment. IT isn't coming in and helping us fix stuff. I don't feel equipped training wise. And that becomes such a roadblock, which creates a frustration, which leads to low morale, etc.
All our managers have poor management skills. We really need a company like Nash Consulting to come in and provide training to all the managers. We can do that, folks.
Good plug, Ethan. Good plug.
Shameless. Just shameless. So that concludes our top 15 management skills. Now, when I read through these top 15, the one thing that really stands out to me about all of them when I'm looking at them in their entirety is that these skills are about helping your employees grow and develop themselves in one way or the other. I mean, that's not all it covers, but look at any of them. All of them could tie back to helping your employees, I think, in some way or the other.
Yeah, bottom line really is, for me to be effective as a manager, as a leader, as a boss, I have to have you as my employee on my radar. I have to be thinking about who you are, what you need, what's going to help you be motivated, what's going to help you give your best. Again, what's going to help you volunteer your heart and your brain, right? If you're not thinking that way as a manager, if instead you're just thinking, well, management just means air traffic controlling the job, right? Management just means making assignments or holding people accountable when they've messed up. If that's what you're thinking, you're missing really the bottom line. You're kind of missing the richness and the depth of what it means to be a manager. So you look at these skills, the 15 we've just gone over, and you're right, Ethan, they're very much about you developing that other person as a human being.
Now, there's a quote by the former General Electric CEO, Jack Welch, pretty famous in the leadership world. He said, "Before you are a leader, success is all about growing yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about growing others." Mm-hmm. And I really believe that to be true. I think he was onto something there. When you're a leader, success is about helping others grow. And that's really what we're talking about here with these skills.
Mm-hmm. And a quote, another quote, right from Lord of the Rings, right? Where there's life, there's hope, and need of victuals.
Yeah. That ties right into it.
That was ridiculous. I just looked that up while we were talking. So.
Okay. Well, folks.
And I have another quote, really important one. Okay. Nobody tosses a dwarf. Yep.
Really?
Yeah, one more.
And which one is that tie? Go.
I will be dead before I see the ring in the hands of an elf. Never trust an elf.
I don't know if that one's going to fly with HR.
Okay.
Let's hold that one back, all right?
All right.
Let's move on. That got a little weird. Folks, today, let's just wrap up talking about what we can now do with these top 15 management skills. So boom, the last 2 episodes, we broke down these 15 skills. We know them now. Besides just maybe writing them down and keeping them on our radar and working on practice them, how can we take these and start making improvements within ourselves, within our teams, within our organizations?
That's a good question, because I've watched a lot of organizations take these 15 skills and wrap them into their very management culture. And it's been cool to see that. And so they do that lots of ways. Let's start with onboarding, right? You've got a new manager. Well, actually, let's start before that. Let's start with hiring. I mean, you can actually, in the hiring process, you can talk to a candidate, whether that's an internal or an external candidate, about management. And what does it look like in this organization to be a manager? Well, here's 15 things that we ask our managers to be focused on and to be growing in. So right there, as you're hiring, on into onboarding, here's a great opportunity to train your managers. And that's such, as we've said multiple times here, the best way to combat the Peter Principle is to equip managers with specific skills. Well, here's a template right here. Here's 15 things you can be working on with your new manager or potential manager to be person. You can use it, as you said already, for your own personal growth. Just have this on your radar. Work through these every month or so. Do some more reading. Do some personal study. You can use it as a template for asking for feedback. Mm-hmm. Right? When you meet with your employees, you might want to visit these things kind of one at a time or together and say, hey, how am I doing on these? Or, where would you like to see me grow? Where am I doing well? Which of these skills do I need to continue to work on so that I can be more effective?
Okay, let me stop you on that one right there, because I think that's probably the most immediate thing a manager can do right now is take these top 15 skills, sit down with your employees one-on-one, and have them walk you through how you're doing with each one of these. You'll know your growth opportunities after the conclusion of those one-on-ones, right? Again, you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know if you're not showing up in one of these areas like you should. Ask them, all right?
Yeah, and next episode, we're actually going to be talking about one-on-one conversations. And we're going to talk about how to ask these questions, because it's obviously a little ironic if, for example, you're seen as someone who doesn't take feedback well, and now you're asking for feedback, you might not get the truth. So we'll talk about how to ask these questions in a way that makes it more likely that you're going to get the truth.
That sounds like a great idea. We'll do that next episode. Run on one-on-one. Is there anything more you want to say about these top 15 management skills before we close out?
Yeah. Gandalf said, do not be so quick to deal out death and judgment. Even the very wise do not see all the ends.
Actually, that's pretty good. Even the wise do not see all the ends. Meaning, even if you think you're wise as a manager, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
Just ask Gandalf.
To the bridge of Khazad-dûm.
It's Khazad-dûm. All right, folks. That's all we have for you today. We will see you next episode in a couple weeks where we discuss running one-on-one meetings. Don't miss it. Bye.